12, offered by Ms. Foxx of North Carolina.
Pursuant to House Resolution 241, the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Foxx, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to support the Parents' Bill of Rights Act. I'm especially proud of the work that our committee has put into crafting this bill. Our committee worked late into the night and early morning and considered dozens of amendments. Nearly 20 were adopted to make the bill even better. I'm proud that we've reported to the floor a common sense bill that has broad support and aligns with what the vast majority of Americans want. The amendments we passed during the committee markup accomplished the same goal we had when writing the bill: protecting parents' rights and making sure that schools can never cut parents out of their children's education decisions. This manager's amendment makes a few minor technical changes to make sure that the amendments we passed during the committee markup will be implemented correctly and that the rights promised are fulfilled. In addition, the manager's amendment adds language to the First Amendment sense of Congress included in the underlying bill. The new language affirms the fundamental rights of parents to direct the education of their children and encourages courts to use the strict scrutiny standard in evaluating cases related to parental rights. Schools should always be accountable to parents, and the parents should always know what their children are being taught and what their children are being exposed to. The Parents' Bill of Rights Act protects those fundamental rights. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of both this amendment and the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves, and the gentleman from Virginia. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, this is another effort to turn classrooms into the epicenter of a culture war. The Politics Over Parents Act doesn't do anything to actually help students succeed and seeks to scare parents into thinking that schools do not have their best interests at heart. The children benefit when their parents and teachers work together, but the Politics Over Parents Act would not take any meaningful steps to increase that parental cooperation. The bill would create necessary and burdensome reporting requirements on schools. It would divert essential resources and personnel from their jobs, meeting the family's real needs, into reporting and everything else in the bill, and it would open the door to dictate what students can and cannot read or learn. The underlying bill distracts from what our public schools really need, and similarly, the manager's amendment does nothing to provide the families and the families with real parental engagement, as some of the amendments would have done that were rejected. So the bill, for example, gives a so-called federal right of action to address the school board. Well, we know that many school boards in recent years needed police protection to conduct their meetings because of credible threats of violence. But these are elected officials. They don't need a federal law to instruct them to be polite. The voters can take care of that. But there's no right that's being given. You already have the right. Now, one thing that is a little concerning is that I had an amendment to allow this right to take place with reasonable limitations. If 100 people show up at a school board meeting, does the school board have to listen to each and every one as long as they want to speak, without any limitation? And each one has a federal right of action where they can bring a lawsuit to compel the school board to sit up and listen to each and every one without limitation. If they've heard from 10 or 15 or 20 people on one side of the argument, on one side of a debate, and nobody on the other side? Do they have to listen to the other 80? I don't know. That's what the bill suggests. But that's I don't know any jurisdiction where you don't have the right to address the school board in a reasonable way. And that's what this bill does. That's what the manager's amendment does. And so I would ask members to defeat the manager's amendment and the bill. I yield back.
The gentleman yields, and the gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself the balance of my time. The gentleman from Virginia, I think, will remember that I believe it was the Loudoun County Schools where the father of a child who had been sexually molested in a bathroom by a young man dressed as a girl, young boy dressed as a girl, who then was transferred to another school, and the parents never notified that this had happened. And when the father stood up at the school board meeting to bring this issue up, he was not allowed to speak. Furthermore, he was arrested. He was wrestled to the ground and arrested. So again, we hear from our colleagues two different scenarios. One, well, already parents have the right to address their school boards. Yes, that's in our First Amendment. We have a right to petition our elected officials for grievances. However, that's not happening, as we have seen in certain places. And whether or not there is a time limit, I would hope that people would be reasonable about that, but we're not dictating that. That will be dealt with. And as the gentleman says, those school board members in most cases are elected, and it'll be up to them to deal with the public in that respect. And if they don't do it correctly, then my assumption is that there will be consequences. The manager's amendment, again, strengthens the underlying bill. I urge its adoption. I also urge passage of H.R. 5. With this legislation, we have an opportunity to make a stand for the rights of parents. And I hope all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will vote with what they say they believe, which is that parents have rights and that we want to have the best education for children. So join us in this effort, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman